African Americans have a rich history both in Louisiana, Florida parishes history and Americans history. What are some of the stories? Who are some of the people? What is unique about those stories and people? Let's find out. This live stream Zoom session will explore the history of African Americans in the Louisiana, Florida parishes. On the third Tuesday of each month at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, I will choose a different topic and invite special guests to explore the rich history of African Americans in the Louisiana, Florida parishes. Good evening, Gaynell. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I am doing fine. Thank you for asking. I'm so excited for this conversation that you and I are going to hold about your ancestral, is it maternal, paternal side of the family?
It's my paternal side, so all
Really?
of my dad's family. Yeah, yes.
That has ties in West Feliciana.
Mm-hmm.
And both you and I both have ties to East Feliciana.
Yes.
We keep
Um,
searching, Gaynell. We're gonna find it. You know where I'm getting ready to go with that.
yeah, it's funny that you said that because right before this show, I was on my
Uh-huh.
mom's DNA and I saw some new Harrells. So
You
I'll
see
be
that?
sending you some messages.
You see that? I'm telling you. Okay, so tonight, Gaynell and Gaynell Brady. First of all, before we get into this, Gaynell, tell us about yourself.
I am native to Louisiana, lived in New Orleans my whole life. I worked at a nonprofit during the day, and at night and on weekends, I own and run a company called Our Mammies, and it's dedicated to telling the stories of Louisiana's African Americans, men and women, through history and genealogy. So,
I see the beautiful African attire. I mean, the beautiful attire you have on. Talk about
mhm.
the blouse and the brooch and the brooch.
So, all of the clothing that I wear, this is the only top that I did not make, except for this dress that was made by Derelict. But everything else, I made it, and I
Oh,
name it
really?
after one of my ancestors. So
Oh,
this is my
okay.
grandma Florence Jefferson look.
Oh, really? Did you get to
yeah.
see a picture of her clothing? Okay.
Mm-mm. I
Okay.
didn't, and I scare myself sometimes. Even with founding a company, I gave these people names before I knew the names, and then when I did the research, there was the names, and then even with the looks, I like come up with the looks based on the way people describe them, or just the way that I saw them in a dream in my mind. It's
Okay, that
weird.
was well, you answered my question, so I didn't even have to ask the question. But
Mhm,
yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for all that you do in the community. I know you've been visiting the schools a lot for Black
mhm.
History Month. You want to talk briefly about that?
Yeah, I am going back to Carver High School. They had a magnificent history presentation, and I showed them
Hmm.
a little snippet from my family tree. And all the kids, I guess, went to the school administration and said, "We wanted genealogy in the school." So I have to go back there to teach the kids
What?
genealogy. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
yeah.
Hey, thanks to the young people for doing that because it's so important.
No, they were serious. There were some for these brilliant high school students. I mean, just amazing. The discussions that we had. In fact, I guess I need to gift them your book. Because they were all into convict leasing and everything else. Like
Uh-huh.
I need to add that to their library. You just
Oh
made
my
me
goodness,
remember. They
awesome.
wanted a full discussion on that. But yeah, you just reminded
And
me. I need to gift them that.
I'll be happy to help in any way that I can.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and just have a brief presentation for those people
Mhm.
that may not know, anything about West Feliciana Parish, because sometimes if a person doesn't have any ties to those parishes, they don't know them.
Mhm.
All right, West Feliciana Parish, Louisiana was established in 1824
In 1824, the Feliciana parishes was divided into East Parish and West Parish. And if anybody think about Angola, Louisiana, Angola, the prison, state penitentiary, is located in West Feliciana, and it occupies 18,000 acres of land. So if you look at the little green color there, there is West Feliciana in that corner right there. See that?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Okay, let's talk about who's the neighbors. Wilkinson County, Mississippi, which is right there when you think about how close it was. It's all on the state line, the Mississippi, Louisiana state line. East Feliciana Parish, West Baton Rouge, Ponkapee Parish, and you also have family there, right, Gaynell?
Yes, I do. In fact, East Feliciana, West Baton Rouge, Ponkapee, almost all the parishes named there. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, everything but Concordia.
Yeah, because they were so close right there, looking for jobs, migrating, marrying, different reasons, And here's a couple of research sites, websites that you can go on to kind of get some information about West Feliciana if your family history is taking you into those areas. This is another site I like. Do you use this a lot as well? US Gen Web project?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, so if anybody was looking for their family, it'll tell you what type of records. If you go to the menu, it'll tell you what records they have, and just play with the records sometime and discover. William Barrow. The reason I wanted to point him out, Gaynell, is because he was one of the largest slaveholders in West Feliciana. In 1808, he owned 150 enslaved people. At his death in 1823, he owned 6 plantations and a total of 345 enslaved people. The source was the 64 parishes. You can see 64parish.org to give you some more information. And the photo is the courtesy of the State Library of Louisiana. There it is, East Feliciana, our ties in red. And if anybody is looking at an oral history project, the West Feliciana African American Oral History Project, and you can go to this site, Gaynell, and I think it's over a dozen. No, it's more than that, about maybe 24, something like that, oral interviews, and you just click on it and you get an opportunity to actually hear the oral interview. And so Nurture Outreach, the second Tuesday of every month, and I definitely want to give a shout out to my co-host and cousin, Karen Harper Royer. All right, Gaynell, so let's talk about your history a little bit. Walk us through it.
Yes, so my history on this particular side of the family, I had to struggle somewhat when it came to my grandma, Rebecca. So she is the one who has ties to West Feliciana. And it's simply because a lot of her siblings died in the early 1900s from typhoid fever. She died when my grandfather was very young. So he didn't really share knowledge about his mother with my dad at all. To my advantage, my family lived on the same land well into the 1990s in Ponkapee Parish.
Really?
And some of them are still there. So on Sundays, we would visit the what I know now as the plantation. I didn't know it as a plantation when I was very young. I just thought my great aunt had a huge backyard. I had no clue that she was still living on a land. And so after doing research and just listening to stuff from my dad, I guess over the years, some of the facts kind of blended on him in terms of his parents' history. And he kept telling me my grandmother was from St. Francisville. His mom was from St. Francisville, but that wasn't the case. It was actually the opposite side, that his dad's family came from St. Francisville, but he never quite understood why. And then just, he knew that they had some ties to St. Francisville from the stories that he heard from his uncle.
What are some of the surnames that your family are tied to in West Feliciana, in St. Francisville?
Yeah, so Coates, Nixon, and Riley. Those are my three largest surnames in that area. And my dad loves that Coates line because he learned he has a grandfather called King Coates. And we thought
Okay.
it was the coolest thing, like how imagine a name such as that
Mhm.
in that parish. But it was funny the way that this happened because I wasn't told about any of this. And if it wasn't for my dad having a vague memory of that St. Francisville tie and me searching adjacent parishes, I wouldn't have found them. And then when I took the DNA test, it brought everything together. So
Mhm.
now I know more about Grandma Rebecca's line than my dad does. And we often have our Sunday conversations with me telling him about his family.
Wow. That's reverse, huh?
It
Uh,
is.
Gaynell, did you ever visit West Feliciana, the areas where your
Oh
ancestors
yeah.
came from?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna share a powerful story about, and if I cry, you guys, it's simply because me visiting West Feliciana, more specifically, the remains of Bayou Sarah saved my life.
Mhm.
Um, so you know the story. I experienced postpartum depression. And a lot of people don't talk about it, but my husband knows I love genealogy and I love traveling. And I wouldn't leave the house at all, Dr. Harrell. I
Mhm.
would stay in one spot for days at a time. I took care of my child, but he knew something was wrong. So one day he just said, let's get dressed. We're going to go for a ride. And he took me to West Feliciana. And I got to visit a museum there. It sits right out there on the main road. And I started talking about my family history, and the lady showed me where Bayou Sarah, whatever remains of it, still
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
And then I got out the car and I was okay. Maybe about 2 years later, maybe about a year or so later, I lost the hearing in my left side. And that snapped me back into depression where I just felt like I lost everything. I kept telling my husband, I can't do our mammies anymore because I'm not going to be able to hear people. I can't hear on my ear. I was down to about 20% hearing on the left side. So if I laid on that ear, I couldn't hear anything. So it made me like feel like giving up. It was really bad. And my husband knew from the last time when I went there for postpartum depression, he took me back.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I put
Mhm.
one foot out the car onto Bayou Sarah and I heard this voice. And
Mhm.
she said, you're going to be okay. And it was funny because she spoke into my left ear.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
from there, I felt like I followed my ancestors' journey. My husband took me from West Feliciana. We rode over the bridge and we
Mhm.
went to Point Capee and I
So
got to visit the graveyard.
you
hmm
did visit a museum. Did you visit
hmm
the library that day?
I've been to the library. In fact, I did a genealogy program at the library for kids.
Okay.
It was maybe a couple of months later. I think that was in 2018. But I did spend some time with the Old Benevolent Society folks in West Feliciana. And I didn't get to go to the courthouse there yet. So
That was
that's
my
on
next
my
question.
agenda.
Mhm.
But I did do the library. I went to the museum. I walked around. I looked at all of these old churches that were still standing. And
Mhm.
at the recommendation of the lady in the museum,
Okay.
I
Did
wanted to
you,
understand the land. Mm-hmm.
okay, so did you connect with anybody at some of the churches there while you was there?
No,
Okay.
because the second time I went, we ended up going over to Point Capee Parish, and that's when I got out and spent half my day going through the cemeteries there.
Mhm.
But through DNA, I was able to find some cousins who live in the land, and now I know of a family cemetery in that area.
Okay. So is that the
Mhm.
first family cemetery that you had heard of in the area? Because they
That's the
probably
first.
buried in a lot of the multiple cemeteries. They married,
hmm hmm
the wife buried her husband there. So,
hmm So
mhm,
this is the one that I've learned about with my Nixon line. Um, but my Coates line, I haven't learned anything about them yet.
mhm,
I haven't really connected. Well, correction, I did connect with a Coates, and she ended up being my sorority sister.
Okay.
So my dad's family was all around me, and I just didn't know it because he didn't know it.
Okay.
But I'm still trying to locate the Coates Cemetery and what remains of it. I know some of them were in Bayou Sarah. I know some of them were in St. Francisville. So still researching.
You sent me a picture earlier. Could you
Mhm.
tell me who is this?
So this is my reason for doing our mammies. That lady on the right holding the baby, that's Belle London Jefferson. She has ties to East Feliciana. I can't do anything without acknowledging her because
And how is she related to you?
she is my second great grandmother, my maternal second great grandmother.
Okay. Mhm.
She's from Clinton, Louisiana, East Feliciana. And
Okay.
I have a lot of London DNA matches because of Mama Bell.
And that comes out of the East Feliciana area.
East Feliciana, and her husband is Alex Jefferson.
Mhm.
And those Jeffersons, Alex's sister Mariah married Isaac Harrell. So
Okay.
connected me with all the Harrells, the McFaddens, the Spears, and everyone else on that line.
I've seen a lot of Spears, Colemans,
Mm-hmm.
of course the Richardsons, but there's another name, the Harrells. It's just a lot of names in that area, and we're trying to connect all. We want to know. There's another picture that I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
And I just love when somebody have pictures to show because
it's rare.
That helps. Yeah.
It does.
Look, you'd be so excited when you get a picture. When somebody's showing you a picture, you found a picture of your ancestors, you're so excited. Now, who is this lady?
The same lady.
Oh, it's the same lady.
The same lady. And I love looking at her photo because her hands to me represent everything that Mama Bell is. I have her photo hanging over my head right now. And then, she reminds me that my family is bigger than what it is. Even that London line, I found some Londons in West Feliciana Parish. And that's why I share Mama Bell, because like you said, I don't have any photos of my ancestors on my paternal side in West Feliciana. But I feel that Mama Bell is going to lead the way. That London line is going to bring it all in together for me.
I know, and you're just hoping somebody has something. Something is out there. What I have been experiencing is that I'm hearing that a lot of people that are cleaning out their loved one's home, those that's not throwing it away, they are dropping it off at the libraries, but it's photographs that nobody can identify, so, but we don't throw them away because we don't ever know if we post it, somebody like yourself who may be looking for an ancestor, we don't know, because in one way, in small communities, Gaynell, we all are related in one way or the other.
Absolutely. And I think it was one of the things that you did very early on in this presentation was just illustrate those boundaries and how close they were. Like, if I wouldn't have known just by knowing how ancestry.com works to search those adjacent parishes and understanding that geography, I wouldn't have found any of those people.
And let me tell you, I'm pulling that up again because you're right. I often tell people who are researching, like St. Helena was formed in 1803 and Tangipahoa Parish came in 1869. So it's very important to know when they was established. I'm just, because you'll say, okay, no, my family wasn't in West Baton Rouge Parish, but look how close it is.
Yeah.
It wasn't in East Feliciana. No, they could have been because it's so close together.
Absolutely. And one easy example of that is, again, on my paternal side, where like the Barrow family, Martin Glenn's family owned, I think it's 7 plantations in Point Capee Parish. And my family some of them were on the West Baton Rouge side on those plantations, and some of them were on the Point Capee side. So you have to look at all of the adjacent parishes especially when you're dealing with large plantation owners like the Barrows and others like it.
That's right, because they own plantations in multiple parishes and they
Mhm.
took people with them.
They
So as
did.
you can see, here is West Feliciana and this is East Feliciana. So you said earlier that one of your ancestors was found, your Landon's ancestors was found in West Feliciana.
Mhm.
It was neighbors,
They were
possible.
neighbors. And it's like you said again. So they went from East Feliciana to West Feliciana to finally landing in East Baton Rouge. And I wouldn't have known that
Mhm.
if my Uncle Clay wouldn't have told me. He said, Gaynell, a lot of them, after they left Clinton and went through West Feliciana, they were looking for work and they landed in Scotlandville. That's
Uh-huh.
where they landed. So it's like all of these parishes are right there together.
Right there.
And
Mhm.
it's amazing. And then especially when you're dealing with those DNA matches, because all of the younger people are still living in Scotlandville, but I have no
Mhm.
ties to that to understand, well, why are you in Scotlandville? So those adjacent parishes, and just like you said, just creating a timeline, creating a map, and searching those boundaries,
Mhm.
that has truly helped me with my research.
Isn't that just so powerful when you can create a map and your
Mhm.
own personal map and map out where your ancestors, just tracing that trail. You and I was talking before we became live on Zoom about the
Mhm.
process of creating your own map, taking your
Yes,
own journey.
yes. And that's what it is. It's a
Yeah.
journey. And I feel that people sometimes miss the mark when they don't want to take that journey for themselves. The way that my ancestor speaks to me may not speak that way to someone else. And I kind of want everybody to experience just a little bit of that. And I thank goodness when my grandmother spoke about anything, with the good, the bad, or the ugly, that I listened, because now I'm putting together all of those tiny, tiny
Right.
pieces, trying to mend together this big puzzle, this big map, and help other people to do that. Um,
Right. Right.
Especially again when it comes to the rural parishes or the Florida parishes, because those parishes to me are often forgotten. Um, there's a lot of research out there for Orleans Parish, and I'll say this as a New Orleans relative, as native.
Mm-hmm.
There's tons of stuff everywhere, but I try to remind people not everyone originated in the big city. These
Exactly.
people moved here and they came from somewhere.
And me and Leonard we talked about that. He said, Antoinette, if it wasn't for you out there in the Florida parishes, I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
know anything. We know about the Bayou parishes. We know about that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and like you said, Orleans. But
Mm-hmm.
how many times do we really think about the Florida parishes, those 8
Absolutely.
parishes?
Absolutely.
And there's a rich history that has
Mm-hmm.
been undocumented and untold,
Mm-hmm.
Gaynell, for a very long time. Today, I went to the St. Helena Parish Library, and so
Mm-hmm.
the librarian said that she said, Dr. Real, the only history that's really here is your history that you are documenting. When I say the history that I'm documenting, not my family history, but the history of the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we have a task to do,
Mm-hmm.
not just we have to preserve the oral histories, the
Mm-hmm.
photographs, the family heirlooms, talk about the land,
Mm-hmm.
talk about the cemeteries.
Mm-hmm.
We was talking today, Gaynell, about the cemeteries. In every Black church, there
Mm-hmm.
was a cemetery committee that
Mm-hmm.
took care of the cemeteries.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like anything else with whatever the women would do,
Mm-hmm.
with the churches, whatever it is. But it
Mm-hmm.
was a community. When you find your family in a community,
Mm-hmm.
you'll find it a whole community. And sometimes you
Absolutely.
find your community before you find your family.
Absolutely. And I'm just thinking about that, examples of that in my own family when they left
Mhm.
from St. Francisville and traveled to Point Capiz. All of them are buried pretty much in the same section right next to that Baptist church in Point
Yeah.
Capiz Parish.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, all of that history is there, preserved. It's there. It was there waiting for me to return, is what I can say. Like I grew up passing by that and I knew where it was. I just didn't know what was in it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I try to remind other people. Don't just put someone in the ground and walk away. go back and visit and check on those lands and make sure that they're protected and preserved. We do live in Louisiana. A lot of our headstones sink. A lot of our tombstones break up. But I think it's important to have that above ground memorial, just a reminder that they were here and they contributed to our society and they deserve that
contribute to
dignity.
us right in the first person, just
Mhm.
contributing to us,
Mhm.
as we take our research journey on researching our own family history. But I've been to West Feliciana several times. Matter of
Mhm.
fact, my husband's family is the Gilmores. And the
Wow.
Gilmores was a very large family too in St.
Mhm.
Francisville. And he often talked about the way that his family lived. And we kind of toured where the old house was. And then we went to the
Mhm.
cemetery. Gaynell, when I tell you it was woody, it was,
Wow.
it's like stepping back in a period. You can hear the
Mhm.
birds whispering, you can see the leaves, and you can hear the wind just blowing. It was and that's how quiet it was without hearing anything else like cars and vehicles. The only thing you heard was nature and saw nature. And I said, oh, this place haven't changed since he was a
Wow.
little boy.
Wow.
Nothing is there. And
Gracious.
he said his father had to leave under some type of circumstances, like many
Mhm.
Black men, and had to leave town. But
Oh yeah.
that history with St. Francisville, not just St. Francisville, but West Feliciana. So I really haven't
Mhm.
explored the area a whole lot.
Mhm. Yeah, I've done St. Francisville. I've done where the road ends, where Bayou Sarah is, where that
Mhm.
railroad depot is. I walked that entire strip. I've been to the area and I've been to the libraries there. I've been to Angola Penitentiary. I've been to that museum there. And I'll tell you, when I learned about the cemetery there,
Mhm.
and it's one thing when you read about the fact that this used to be a plantation and it was a large plantation owned by a very large family. The guy, one of the large dealers of people in the country at one time. And when you put all of those pieces together and bring it back to 2020, 2021, it made me sick of the stomach. I had to walk outside the museum and sit down at the entrance because my body couldn't take it anymore.
From looking at everything that they had in the museum.
Looking at everything that they had in the museum and then taking a look at the structure of the penitentiary and
Okay.
understanding that it's still the same setup.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
still the same look and it's still not benefiting the community
Mhm.
in terms of like, I guess my stomach turned when I saw the images of the two cemeteries there and all they get is a cross with no name.
Yeah.
And just some of the treatment of the people there. And all that's in the exhibit. It's all on the walls. And I couldn't take it. It was overbearing. Like you said, you drive down this long road with all of these tall trees. And then my mind just literally snapped back to the time of when this was a plantation and thinking you have the river behind you, you have the bluffs to one side of you, and then this big long road ahead of you.
Mhm.
Where do you run to? And that's why I guess I
So there
try to
was
remind
Bayou
people.
people. Was your family, because Bayou Sarah was there? Was it Bayou people?
No,
Oh,
they all worked on a plantation, still trying to narrow that plantation down because it was a large Nixon family. And I do know that my grandma Lizzie, she's my third great grandmother, Riley, was a midwife there. And I actually found her living next door to another midwife, but I haven't placed them on a specific plantation yet.
okay. Now the plantation you just mentioned,
Mhm.
the Nicholas plantation. Did you find a history of the plantation?
No, the one that the Nixon family settled on, I didn't. I just know that they were living at East Fork Road.
Okay.
That's where the last one died in 1934. But I wanted to know more about them, especially as it relates to Grandma Lizzie, since I knew she was a midwife. So her daughter actually ended up moving to Point Coupee Parish.
Okay. I know LSU Special Collections at the Tilton Memorial Library has a great deal of information on parts of
Mhm.
that area. Did you find anything there when you was researching your family history?
Not yet.
Have you been there to search?
I have been in contact with them about the records, but I'm trying to get it to that specific ward, to that specific area. I think it's one of those situations to where that particular plantation owner hasn't put forth the information yet. Because I have
Yeah,
seen like
yeah.
the rosters of nearby plantations, but none of my ancestors' names
Yeah.
were on those. So
Mhm.
this has been my new quest of encouraging people, if you have documents, to make it accessible to the public. But I know the
Especially,
general
right,
area. Mhm.
right, because those family records that may be still in the house,
Mhm.
in the care of the family, um, prior to 1870, we
Mhm.
may not be able to find anything on our families
Mhm.
if those records are not made available to the public.
Mhm.
So sometimes when we do find those family collections at these
Mhm.
universities or the state archives, it's very helpful if
It
we can
is.
pinpoint a family member on that plantation. So
It
I
is.
I totally agree with you. Um, and that makes me think about the material that I'm preserving now. I want
Mhm.
to make it accessible for other researchers or,
Mhm.
writers or
Yeah.
family members who may be
Yeah.
researching the family as well.
Yeah.
Gaynell, if you had to suggest any places to visit in West Feliciana for someone who may have family ties
Mhm.
and they've been online, they see what they have to offer, what would you
Mhm.
suggest? Any places to eat, museums, cemeteries, churches, what have you?
So what I did on my last visit there, I did stop at the Old Benevolent Society church building. I know that they're doing some fundraising to restore that building, but the front is still there. The building is still there. They're just doing repairs. So please stop by that facility. That institution. There's also, like I said, there's a history museum there that's on that main road. I can't think of what it's called right now. And just keep going down that road. You'll see the old railroad depot, and you'll get a greater
Is there a name
understanding.
for it? Is it a name for the museum that you know?
There is, and
Well,
I
maybe you
can't.
can just Google museums
Yeah,
in
there's
West
only that
Feliciana.
one.
Yeah.
That's that one history museum, and it's all on that same strip. And I
Just
would
one
recommend
museum? Just one?
just one. I
Mm-hmm.
would recommend parking the car at the museum and getting out and walking up and down that strip. There are some stores there. There's a lot of historical homes there just to walk past, to get a feel for the land. Then get back in your car, keep driving towards the river. You'll see a train depot there. It's right near Bayou Sarah. In fact, the lady at the museum said that's pretty much the last remains of Bayou Sarah. It was taken by the flood. So,
Mm-hmm. So
but
what's in a train depot? Is it like a museum itself? No.
no, but what I gained from that was a geographical understanding of why we find people who are born and raised in West Feliciana with ties to Woodville, Mississippi, and understanding how that cotton moved from one area to the other, just like people did. So that's still there. And then also there's this old, like I said, train depot that's right across the street from there. And if you have ties to Bayou Sarah, that's all that remains of Bayou Sarah. The road ends there.
Is there like little cabins along Bayou Sarah? You really don't know because you haven't seen any images of it, huh?
I haven't. In fact, that particular day I was there, there was a huge rain event, so the road was flooded when you go so far down. So the town still floods very quickly. But I'm trying to think of places to eat there. I did see, and I didn't get to stop, but there's this little praline shop or pecan candy shop that's on the same road there.
Mhm.
But all of that's on that main strip. The
Yeah,
library is
they
a
can
little
find
distance
it.
from there, but again, it's that main road. If you turn where the sign that says
There
St.
was a
Francis,
genealogy department at the library,
I didn't get much assistance with genealogy
but
at the
there was
library,
one.
but there is one.
There is one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
please inquire. I've been encouraging people to do so. The staff there was very helpful when I did the presentation there and encouraging people to come back to research. It's not a very
Mhm.
large library, which probably can explain like the resources, but it's always worth it. As you know, Ancestry does, other places are always updating their collections as well. So please
Mhm.
go in and inquire. And then if you have time, once you're on that main road, there's like a lot of small African American churches that you can just visit as well. I love to see those because of the cornerstones. I love to
Yeah.
see if I can find like any of my ancestors' names on the cornerstones to see if they were in that specific community.
Speaking about the cornerstone, I want to show you what we did today in, where did we go today? Rocky Hill, Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first thing that we wanted to do was, let's see if I can find it right quick.
Yeah. And by the way, the name of that museum is the West Feliciana Historical Museum.
Okay, speaking about cornerstones, let me just share.
I can't wait to see it.
And you are so correct because there is 3 cornerstones.
Oh,
I have to go
wow.
back. What did I do? I just came. Oh, here it is. Here it is.
Wow.
Antoinette. There we go.
This is the African Methodist Church. Wow. Look at all those names. That's why I tell people to find those churches. Look at that. That's a gold mine.
I think we're calling out some names.
M.A. Tickles, C. Holmes, S. Edwards, G.C. Grant.
So that was 3. I'm gonna put this on mute here. Yeah, that was 3 cornerstones. So look like each time they renovated the church, they and I was so happy that there was a cornerstone because I went to a church just yesterday looking for the cornerstone in the church and I could not find it. So it looked like the new contractors, if it was on the original building, looked like they just built over it. Over the yeah.
That's so hurtful. And I love
Yes.
this one
So you
because I
see the
see the
3?
date. Yeah, it said 1874. How incredible.
And this was 1957.
Wow.
I forgot. I think it was 1927 or something.
Incredible.
But
And
you can
that's,
see, I found the
yes,
homes on each one of them.
look at
So the
that.
Holmes family, what does this tell us? The Holmes family had a very long history in St. Helena with the
The church.
Rocky AME Church.
With the church. And that's the thing. That's why I tell people, for me, even when I can't get to the courthouse, because for me, it's always timing. I work during the weeks. I can't always get off when they're open, but even so, I still visit because it's still empowering. Like you said, to go to that church and to see that cornerstone and to see a name affiliated with you, to me, it means the world to me because it's again an above
It's a
ground reminder
history.
that they were there. Yeah,
They was
hey,
there.
they were
Yeah.
here.
And so
Yes.
that would tell us also too, possibly if the secretary kept the history of the church, that would be a great place if you're looking for the history of the church. You see your family members on the cornerstone. You know that the church anniversary, the first thing they want to make is a souvenir book.
Of
And when
course.
they make that souvenir book, the first thing they want to put in there is the history. So I feel that every church secretary should have at their fingertips the history of the church.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, from my mom's side, it helped me. That's how I knew my grandparents moved from Clinton to Des Salmons to New Orleans because of the church history.
And that's important. And so we're working on right now, Gaynell, preserving funeral programs through Richardson's Funeral Home.
Beautiful.
And so we have preserved over 1,000 and something at this point in 2 different locations. One, the East Baton Rouge Parish Library, but those funeral programs are for the Louisiana, Florida parishes. So it's not just Tangipahoa Whole Parish or St. Helena. There's something there for all parishes. And I do want to note that another very important thing that we should consider is preserving the history of the churches.
Yes. Yes.
That is very important.
Absolutely.
That Facebook page, website should be, every church should have the history as about the church,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
we're losing the histories of the churches.
Mm-hmm.
We have lost the history of most Black schools or the colored schools before integration. We have lost the oral histories of the midwives and
Mm-hmm.
all the other things, cultural things in our community.
Absolutely.
So it's very important and imperative that
Mm-hmm.
we start to document it,
Mm-hmm.
those oral histories, transcribe them, because we are removing ourselves every day. Gaynell, we think
Mm-hmm.
about a lot of people in their 70s, when people ask them something they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me tell you why. They come from a generation where they didn't sit around
Mm-hmm.
the adults, as the adults was talking. When the
Mm-hmm.
adults was talking, they had to go and play. Unlike
Yes.
today, the children sit around family members, but most of the times
Mm-hmm.
family members is not talking about anything worth
Mm-hmm.
even,
Mm-hmm.
listening to. But, and so they don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
now look at that generation there.
Yes.
They don't know.
Yes.
And I'm hearing them say we wasn't allowed to sit around,
Yes.
but we would visit on a Sunday, we'll
Yes.
visit Aunt Carol, but we'll
Mm-hmm.
be out there playing with the kids or whatever we're doing, and the adults will be there talking. So that's that
Mm-hmm.
generation.
You're right. My dad was the same way. It was just a lot of stuff he just didn't know. And he literally said that they were not allowed to ask any questions. He said, by the time you guys
Yes.
came around, your grandma got soft. So she started answering you guys, but they just weren't allowed to question anything or to ask about anything, even if it was a good question. It just,
Yes.
no, go outside. And just hearing you talk about the church just made me remember I had to visit Tulane University to get photographs of the first
Mm-hmm.
pastor. Oh, well, actually, he's the second pastor of one of our family churches. And it was simply because the daughter of that minister, when the pastor died, she turned everything over to Tulane
Yeah.
University. And if she wouldn't have done that, I
It would
wouldn't
have
have
been
seen the
destroyed.
Bible. I wouldn't have seen the earlier photos of the church.
Mm-hmm.
So even when people know that they're going to close a church, just don't throw away the records. There's a place for them, and
Yes,
people want to
and
see it.
thank you for mentioning that too, because we really have to use our platforms. Every genealogist or family historian need to use their platform to talk to not only family members, but other establishments in the community, the churches, the Masons. There's a whole history right there
Mm-hmm.
with the Eastern Stars.
Mm-hmm.
I would really, you know, one of my goals and one of my things to do is to collect as many oral histories on the Eastern Stars,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't see them. They used to have their little hats
Yes.
on and their little
Yes.
uniforms, and they took their positions very serious.
Yes.
But we're losing that history
Mm-hmm.
of the Eastern Stars because we're
Yes.
not documenting.
I see even that with some of the benevolent societies that are
Uh-huh.
inactive today. And I
Mm-hmm.
always, like, when I look at the older obituaries and such, I see those names. You see the Eastern Stars, you see the benevolent associations, not necessarily for second lines and fun and game, but like benevolent society help me
Mm-hmm.
pay for burials and help me to pay
Yes.
for the sick. Like, to see some of the
Mm-hmm.
names of all of those old associations, just wow, it's amazing how they all came together and said, this is how we're going to organize to support each other. And
Right.
incredible for me. And a
It
lot
was
of
a
that's gone.
community. It was a
Mm-hmm.
community where family and extended community family, everybody stayed together. That's why it's
Mm-hmm.
very important to know the history of those communities and the
Mm-hmm.
name of the people who make up those communities as
Yes.
well. And the
Yes.
church played a vital role.
Absolutely.
Everything that every church the Black schools. There was the
Mhm.
baseball teams. That's something else too, Gaynell. In the
Yes.
rural communities like in West Feliciana, East Feliciana, Tangipahoa, you often
Mhm.
hear people talk about the baseball team.
Yes.
I played
Yes.
baseball at the
Mhm.
park, and while they was playing baseball, somebody was barbecuing, and there
Yes.
was a lot of things going on, you know.
Mhm.
Children was playing together. That was their way of creating their own entertainment on a Sunday after
Mhm.
church.
Mhm.
I remember my family talking about those days.
Wow. I
Yeah.
can remember my dad telling me his uncle, Robert Banks, played baseball in Point Capee, and
Mm-hmm.
he played for my great aunt's team that was owned by Joe Bradley Dewdrop Inn. That was the name of his little bar and lounge. And
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Uncle Robert played for them, and my grandpa would always go like in the woods and hunt something, and they would eat barbecued, stewed
Yeah.
rabbit, and all of that
Yes.
stuff. Like
Yes.
that's what
Yes.
they did on Sundays.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. And that's so amazing that you would say that, because I think it just died out here. Probably you saw it dying off in the 80s.
mhm,
And another story that we are losing here when we think about the Mississippi Delta, we think about the juke joints, we think about,
mhm,
the
mhm.
hole in the wall. So
Yeah.
even that little history in itself, because one lady told me that James Brown played at a place called Steptoes in
Wow.
Tangipahoa. And so I remember one of, I think it was the granddaughter-in-law who was
Mhm.
writing the history about, I don't know why my computer's about to go out on me. Hold on 1 minute. Keep talking,
Yes.
Gaynell. Let me just.
Wow. That's interesting. It's almost as if when you think about that, it was an entire community. You had the church, you had the schools, you had the bar and lounge, you had all of these, I guess, ways. For me, it's, I think of it as a little bit of a relief. Like, even though I had a hard work day, we still came together as a unit to get to know each other, to learn about family, but also to just celebrate life. Um, to me, that's inspiring. It's almost like a lesson learned for today. Like, even though you're working and doing multiple things, it's always cool to take out time to be with family, to learn about each other, and to celebrate with each other. And that's what I think about with those baseball teams, because I can only imagine how competitive it was, but the sport, but just how that community felt to share those big pieces of meat. My dad was talking about, like, barbecuing a rabbit, and how my grandpa wouldn't tell you what you were eating until you ate it. To me, all of that is like, is funny, but I'm like, wow, that it's almost as if, for me, to hear that amount of family is amazing. Like, the fact that we're losing that with technology, because
Yeah.
everybody's sitting around, like, I'm guilty of it. We play on
Yeah.
the phones,
Yeah.
but to get in the yard and play baseball, to barbecue and share stories, those are the things that I think we'll remember more, instead of how many emails we've answered today,
Yeah.
or updating a Facebook status.
And when we think about the women quilting, so
Mhm.
all those stories like that, Gaynell, it is up to us to document
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
It's not there because someone else just didn't do it. We are those someone else, we are those
Mhm.
people. And as
Mhm.
we come across it, we document it. One of the stories I'm working on right now is the strawberry pickers in
Wow.
Tangipahoa Parish. And so I found some beautiful photographs.
Oh my
We
goodness.
can't identify the people, of course, but the location has been identified for those that
Awesome.
pick strawberries. And the strawberry festival is coming up soon, but you never
Mhm.
hear anything about, the people who pick the strawberries. And so myself and Mr. Eddie Pons are going to do an extensive article on the strawberry pickers.
Oh my goodness. And everything we name, I got to go back to Grandma Lizzie, because it would be, for me, it's not right not to mention again, you still had those women who were taking care of the sick and taking care of the people
Mm-hmm.
within that community. So if they were picking strawberries and they got hurt, they would have went to somebody like Grandma Lizzie.
That was the nurse. Those
That
was the
was it.
nurse. So that's why when you look at it, you know, our history is rich, but
Mm-hmm.
it's undocumented. A
Mm-hmm.
great portion of that is because we are not doing it. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
through lack of knowledge about it,
Yes.
Many other things not knowing. But I feel like
Mhm.
a lot of the retired school teachers in the communities, that would be a great way for them to come
Yeah.
together. Like some women come together, they crochet, for them to
Mhm.
write down history as they recall it. That would be
Absolutely.
something amazing to see. But it's been a great journey for me, Gaynell, just moving
Mhm.
around in the Florida parishes,
Mhm.
West Feliciana. I'm always talking to my husband about, you got to get more involved. You got to know,
Yes. Yes.
you should look at the Gilmore family, which is a huge family, you
My
know.
goodness.
Yeah. So
Now
all of,
you you
huh?
have me want to check my and see if I have any Gilmore
Well,
matches.
you should, because, everybody is related one way
Yeah.
or the other with those large families,
Mhm.
13 children, 22
Wow.
children. People had large families back in those
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. Wow. And they're all, like I said, we're coming together on Sundays. We're playing
Hmm.
baseball. We're eating together. We're hanging out together. We're working together.
Right, right.
So, where else are we
And
gonna
you're
go?
planning on a Sunday, they was planning their things that they would do. Gaynell, let me tell you about this one story I've
Hmm.
heard several people talk about. They said that on a Sunday, when they would go to church,
Hmm.
because some of them was coming out the rural areas, like deep in the woods, they
Yeah.
would stay all day. And when they got ready to eat dinner or lunch, the women would go to the car, they would pop the trunk open, and they would have all their food, and all the people would move around to trunk, tasting different foods. I actually got an opportunity to see a picture like that.
What?
Yes, yes. And it was like you can see the people, the trunks are open, the food. It was a black and white photograph, and you can see the people going from car to car, from car to car, just eating. You can see it was just
Goodness.
amazing.
That sounds like a huge family reunion.
Every
That's what that sounds
Sunday.
like to me.
Yeah, every Sunday. And all the children was playing. So going to church on a Sunday was more than just going to church. They did fellowship and break
Mm-hmm.
bread on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
See relatives, because look, they was working in the field from Monday to Friday,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And sometimes the men was still working in the field. The
Mm-hmm.
women may be canning, doing the laundry, taking
Mm-hmm.
care of the children, cleaning the house. And so on Sunday, they look forward to relaxing and visiting and tasting some of the good food.
Goodness. Goodness. And I'm laughing so hard because I'm it's making me think about stories my dad has told me about how because my great uncle played baseball and he would go and he had a life in Point Coupee Parish, and then because he played baseball he had another life in West Feliciana Parish.
Oh, wow,
And
that's amazing.
and it's so funny because I'm still seeing the fruits of that now with all of my DNA matches, that his family is huge. And it's just it reminds me of it makes me think about like the stories that were shared at these
Hmm.
trunks and the recipes, and
Yes, yes,
like
yes.
that, even that, just sharing those recipes and the simple ingredients, right? Like just plain old butter, eggs, and sugar, not anything that's preserved, just
And
fresh
there was a
fruit.
support system too, Gaynell. They was also
Mm-hmm.
working on if there was something that needed to be done during the week.
Mm-hmm.
The men was, working
Mm-hmm.
together. If the women was
Mm-hmm.
going to be canning,
Mm-hmm.
they would help one another,
Yes.
and then they move on to the next woman's house. But it was a
Wow.
united front between the men and the women.
Mm-hmm.
So as we go back and we study our history, we can look at what was the strength of our family.
Mm-hmm.
What was the weakness of our family?
Yes.
Because just like we have strengths, there is weakness. Everything is
Yes.
balanced,
It's, it's
right?
yeah.
It's
I think
balanced.
you're right. I think like I guess that's why I've been more focused on like the 1900s, because I feel that everything that we knew in the early 1900s, those are the same skill sets that we're going to need right now.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
what we
as they
need.
say, history has a way of repeating in itself, right? So it has a
Mm-hmm.
way of repeating itself. But
Mm-hmm.
certainly, um, I plan to get my husband to go to West Feliciana to spend 2 days when he go on
Awesome.
vacation. I really want to make the vacation time exploring my
Mm-hmm.
roots.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
Gaynell, we'll never finish. There's
No.
always something new we find, new
Yes.
people, new places.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it keep
And
you on the road.
it does. And then I love how like that new information, like I said, my heart feels that one day somebody's going to turn over information at LSU and it's the information I need. Or someone's going to
That's
put something
right.
on a wall in a
Positive
museum.
thinking.
It's going to be
Positive
on a
thinking.
wall,
Put it out there in the universe. Somebody's
Mhm.
going to turn it over.
Somebody's going to turn it over. I've searched and I can't find their names, but I know they were in that area. I have all of the proof that they were there. I just need that next step for them.
And
And
sometimes you just got to keep checking, maybe
Mhm.
every 90 days or 6 months,
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
check and see if there's been anything new
Mhm.
added to the databases that's out there, to those sites,
It'll
those
happen.
resource sites. Yes, it
It'll
will.
happen. It'll
I'm
happen.
convinced, because I see new material. As much as I add new material, I do
Mhm.
see other material being added as well.
Absolutely. I think if anything else, we can teach people where to put the material. And I
Yeah.
think you do an amazing job of that. Like you show people there are so many ways that you can preserve this history for the next generation. And I just wish that more people would heed your example and just make it available. I had one of those experiences 2 weekends ago, and I just want to leave you with the information that you put in front of me. I always teach it to others. And the way that you put that information in those universities, and you didn't put them all at once, you spread it out. And I had this young lady that I met, and her family had access to a list of enslaved people that were up in Natchitoches. And the first weekend I met with her, she was like, I don't know if I want to give it. By the second weekend, when I helped her to do her genealogy, she
Mhm.
understood the importance
So she
of
shared.
making that information publicly available. And
Yeah.
she said, Gaynell, I'm going to share it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that too, Gaynell, because that's what it's all about for me, is sharing. Because Gaynell, when I share, if you hold your hands like this, so
Mhm.
tight, nothing
Mhm.
can get in and nothing can get out. But if you
Wow.
open it up, hmm, what you have, you share, and then you're going to receive. You're going
Wow.
to receive.
That's your logo.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
I just
Mhm.
believe in my
Mhm.
ancestors and everyone's ancestor who I come across in the community. They're not mine exclusively,
No,
So
no.
I do want to share, because I don't want to be the only one. I am not doing anything for myself by being the
Mhm.
only one to know or to preserve it or keep it inside of my office where it would not be utilized for anything.
Mhm.
That's not what I would like to see of all those 30 years, or close to 30 years
Mhm.
of research,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that's something that we all as researchers must think too about, is
Mhm.
what will become of my material. I can't
Mhm.
stress that enough. um,
Mhm.
am I going to leave it in the will? But leave it to whom in the
Right.
family if that person or those people do not show any interest in it now? So I
Mhm.
think more of the now, but yet for tomorrow.
Mhm.
Because if I preserve it in my lifetime, it is
Mhm.
going to the places of my choice.
Mhm.
I am the one that organized the collection.
Yes.
Uh, I know what's there, although I can't remember all of that material. Because if I
Mhm.
kept everything, this room where I'm sitting at, it would be boxes filled up to the ceiling, you know,
Mhm.
and I'm not that type of archivist, I'm not an
Right, right,
archive,
right.
so I would do the community a injustice if I didn't put that material somewhere, like the Center for Southeast Louisiana Studies, the East
Mhm.
Baton Rouge Parish Library, the Amistad,
Mhm.
the library here in Amet, Louisiana. So those are the 4 places that I have contributed for the study of African American research as well as Choctaw Indians research.
Mhm. And it's going to help for people like myself. It may be one day that I have to turn to that collection to find one of my ancestors, and it's just going to keep building. And I hope that people will continue to add more information, especially as it relates to the Florida parishes. As I
Gaynell,
said, I'm waiting.
let me share something with you. Gaynell, I went to look at my own collection online. I
Mhm.
looked at the index because the index is online. I'm saying, when did I have that? I don't remember that. What? I have that?
Wow.
So that tells
Wow.
me my brain cannot consume all the information that I have donated. So just
Wow.
think if that was in here in the box, it would be lost
Right.
because after all, my brain can't hold all of that. And so
Mhm.
that's why it's there, but the index is all online. And when I
Yes.
see that, I say, okay, I did what I was supposed to. I didn't take the time to always study what I was putting in there. I just knew what I was looking
The
at had to
gathering.
be preserved.
Mhm.
Look at it later. That was my attitude.
Wow.
That was my motto. Preserve it because more and more is coming every day.
Yes.
And it takes me some time to process a collection if it's donated to me.
Mhm.
I don't take the box, Gaynell, and just go drop the box off just like that. I organize the box, make
Mhm.
sure is very well organized, and that helped the persons who's receiving it. They don't have to call me back and say, Antoinette, could you tell me what this is?
Mhm.
Where does this go? No, it is already organized. And so that's how a lot of my collections go up online so quick when I'm donating them because I did that work before I donated it.
Wow. So I have a question.
Mhm.
At what point should, like, someone like myself, I haven't been doing this 30 years. I've been doing this about 14 years. At what point should we begin the process of, like you said, this needs to be preserved? Let me set this aside. Especially when we're running across older photos, older church documents, things of that nature. Like, what is your advice for people who have been doing this a couple of years now? And I'm starting to have to put stuff
Mhm.
in storage for myself because everything is piling up, as you said.
Well,
What?
Gaynell, I have
Mhm.
thank you for that question. I have processed all along the way.
Awesome.
So I have preserved all along the way. I
Hmm.
think my first preservation in the Amistad in New Orleans was about 2000.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. So
Awesome.
and as I flip those numbers for a new birthday,
Hmm.
maybe I feel a different type of arthritis pain. I'm saying to myself, okay, it's time,
It's time.
Antoinette. It's
Hmm.
time. So once a year, I try not to let anything that has been donated to me or anything that I have established in my own collections stay in my home past that year. It's gone.
Wow. Great advice.
Yeah, because it can be very overwhelming. It can be exhausting. It's a brain teaser because
Hmm.
I create my index. So when I go and make my deposit, the index, I give them a copy of the index. So I
I
can
got
always refer what's in that collection if I'm looking for something personal myself. Not to
you.
mention
Hmm.
that some of the things I do donate, I have to
Hmm.
scan them and put them in my collection on external hard drives and in the clouds before I donate it. Not everything, just those
Hmm.
things, those collections that I feel that a piece of something that may be more important. I need to
Got
hold
it.
on to this a little bit more. So I try to keep my digital file as well of some very important things. But I
Wow.
had to make that decision based on too, not just the things I mentioned, but my family, talking
Hmm.
to my husband, uh,
Hmm.
talking to my children, and looking at where they are with how do they appraise this collection? How do they see it? Do they see it of any importance? And then that also helped me make the decision, okay, you must get ready to let go of some of the material.
Wow. That's the
Yeah.
message that I need to hear. And I'm sure many others out there, because we get
15
so
years.
busy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
15 years, it's time for you to start thinking along the terms of, what do you want to do? What provisions you want to make for your collection, set up a meeting, a Zoom meeting, in-person meeting, with the archivist there or the executive director, and let them know what you have. And which most of my material that's related to New Orleans goes to the Center for the Amistad Center.
Awesome.
Okay, and a lot of information that relates to the Florida parishes, I have donated to the Center for Southeast Louisiana Studies.
Wow.
Mhm.
So people studying anything dealing with West Feliciana definitely need to visit that collection.
Yeah, because it's a little bit not just genealogy, but it is the civil rights history, the Black Cowboys, just things that I can think about off the top of my head of some of the information that the World War II records, World War I, all that type of information.
My goodness. Yeah, that seems like a day or two of research, like spending time just going through. Because I know when I went to Amistad to look at my family's church collection, it took me about 2 days. Like if you're really going to sit there and read through everything, and I was here in the city, it took me about 2 days. So just planning a research trip, I would advise anyone to not just come in and leave out, because it's going to take so much time. Just give yourself a couple of days if you're going to research in those areas.
Before closing, I would like to ask you, have you ever been to the Louisiana State Archives on the second and third floor?
I haven't been to the second and third floor. Whoa.
Did you by chance to see any photographs that I post about the different levels and all the documents, the boxes?
I've seen your photo. Of course, I've seen your stuff.
That's what I'm talking about. Do you see the boxes of information?
Yeah.
That is housed in, when I tell you levels from audio to video, audio and video in one department, and boxes of material. There's no way in a person's lifetime you would be able to go through everyone. It was like the informational warehouse.
Wow.
Gaynell, it has been extremely a very powerful hour of information sharing and gathering with you as always. How can anyone learn about you and find you on the internet? Is there a website?
Yes. So my website is ourmammies.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now TikTok at Our Mammies. All of it's the same, OurMammys. And you can also email me if you have a specific question at ourmammies@gmail.com.
Gaynell, tell us about your museum before we close out.
So I'm actually working on a little space. I'm going to be doing more virtual talks geared towards families and schools in a yard. It's in the lower 9th ward, still working on it. I'm hoping to reveal it on May 1st or May 2nd. So coming along. Hurricane Ida set me back a little bit, but it's coming. And there's going to be a show tomorrow on it. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, tomorrow?
Tomorrow, actually on WDSU.
Yeah.
It's featured. Yeah. So it's coming along slowly, but it's coming.
Is that with Gina Grayson?
It is with Casey Ferran. It's with
Okay.
Casey Ferran.
All right. And Thursday, I'll be coming on WDSU with Gina Swanson to reveal some of her family history. So Gaynell, please make sure is that coming on at 10 o'clock at night?
It's coming on at 5:30 tomorrow. Yes, 5:30.
Okay,
so you're coming on Thursday. Okay.
I'll be sure to tune in, and don't forget to share it with everybody. So
I
we can
will.
share it right here on Nurturing Our Roots. So
Oh,
Gaynell, I
wow.
want to
Thank
thank you
you.
for being a guest. As always, it's a pleasure to talk with you, to learn, to share, and continue to do what you're doing. And I am so proud of the journey that you have taken, that you have listened to the voices of your ancestors.